So with all of that being said, to answer the question, did the College Football Playoff Committee make a huge mistake by putting TCU in? Here's my answer. And I'm going to let you know right now, this is going to rub some people the wrong way, but I don't care. For the past 24 hours or so, this is all I see everybody talking about and saying. Oh, the committee, they didn't pick the 4 best teams in the country, they picked the 4 most deserving teams. I've seen numerous tweets, and I'm sure you guys have seen it as well, and people on ESPN talking about it, how the committee, they should be embarrassed, and they should have invited Alabama, and blah, 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 blah. So in tonight's video, we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to answer the question, did the College Football Playoff Committee make a huge mistake? That is the question of this video, and please, watch this video all the way through, and let me know your thoughts down below. I do want you guys to hear me out because I'm going to offer you different perspectives and a lot of points that many people aren't bringing up. It goes without being said, it's going to be an interesting video because it's a controversial topic. You know what to do if you like college football and you want to be a part of the best college football community on YouTube. Consider joining, subscribing, doing all that nice stuff. All right, Matt, blah, 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 shut the crap up. Now without further ado, let's get into it. Did the College Football Playoff Committee make a huge mistake? To answer that question, we gotta look at the facts. It's not quite as simple as me sitting up here going, oh yeah, TCU's fraudulent, Alabama should have made it in. It's not that simple. That's what all these random people are gonna say left and right. I actually want to break this down and look at it. What are we labeling as a mistake? What is everybody saying the biggest mistake the committee made? That's TCU, right? TCU getting into the playoff. So if we, or the people out here, are labeling TCU as a mistake, we gotta look at this. Okay, well if they're a mistake, who would have been a better option? Because I think everybody's came to the conclusion that Ohio State, they got the talent to compete and even beat Georgia, so nobody's mad that they got in. When you start to look at this, it really gives you a great perspective that we didn't have too many teams to put in the playoff, period, the end. In my humble opinion, if you're not in this current top 6, you had no business even sniffing the playoff, and the top 6 is currently Georgia, TCU, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee. So going off that alone, with 4 of those teams already being in the playoff, there's only other 2 teams that would have been up for this conversation and could have quote-unquote replaced that mistake, and that's Alabama or Tennessee. As most of us know, Alabama, they cruised in their bowl game, demolished Kansas State. By the way, Kansas State did beat TCU, and Tennessee, they beat Clemson by about, what was it? Oh yeah, 17 points. Tennessee beat Clemson 31-14, and Alabama beat K-State 45-20, and they boat raced them. Most people, I'd say everybody outside the state of Tennessee, and I saw even people on ESPN saying this. I think Colin Cowherd said it and Stephen A. Smith. If they didn't want TCU getting in the playoff, they wanted Alabama getting in. You didn't see too many people clamoring and even making an argument for Tennessee getting in just due to the fact they lost by 30 to South Carolina. I get your argument, Tennessee fans, you beat Alabama, but you're not going to lose by 30 against South Carolina and even get a chance at getting in. So I'm going to have to brush you aside. So that only leaves us with one other team that could have replaced this quote-unquote said mistake, and that's Bama. Let's get the obvious out of the way. Does Bama match up better with Georgia? Would they have gave them a better game? Duh, everybody knows that. Although I still would have picked Georgia to beat Alabama because it would have been the same thing as the national championship game last year, they still matched up better. I'm going to show you this stat right here. This is TCU's recruiting class the past 4 years compared to Georgia's recruiting class the past 4 years. You don't got to be a rocket scientist to figure out these teams on paper, they don't match up well. Georgia has a bunch of 4- and 5-star recruits. TCU does not. Do what you please with that information. The bottom line is everybody already knew this. Alabama, it would have been a better matchup. End of story. I don't want to ramble on that too much longer. But, and I have a big but, was the argument that I brought up. Everybody brought up, including the committee. TCU, they deserve to be in. They finished the regular season undefeated. They won all their games in the Power 5 conference. That has to account for something. For example, take a look at this graphic yet again. If we just looked at who had the most talent, what's the point of even playing the game? There's a reason we play the game. Although more times than not, Georgia's going to beat TCU, you still got to play it. When it comes down to it, Alabama finished the regular season 10-2, and overall, they had an embarrassing season for their standards. I want you to really think about this. The best win for Alabama this season was a 1-point road win against Texas with their backup quarterback. However, you got to take this into consideration when you take a look at the Alabama argument. Both of their losses were 2 road losses against current top 10 teams on the last second play. Granted, I'll be the first one to tell you Alabama could have easily finished this year 8-4. There was a couple other games where they could have lost on a last second play. And to go on top of that, I think this does matter. They play in the toughest conference in the entire world, and that's the SEC. So to me at least, and I believe to the people on the committee, that accounts for something, because the SEC, it is the most respected conference, rightfully so. They're the best of the best. If you don't agree with that, well, you're probably an idiot. On the flip side, taking a look at TCU's schedule and who they played, it doesn't exactly impress me. All the ranked teams they beat and played were barely inside the top 25, and most of them dropped out of the top 25. Oklahoma, they finished with a losing record. Terrible season. Kansas, they're average. Oklahoma State, they're average. Kansas State, probably their best win. They had a solid year. West Virginia, pitiful. Texas Tech, average. Texas, they beat them, and Alabama also beat them on the road. Baylor, terrible year. Iowa State, they're pitiful. And last but not least, they play Kansas State in the championship. So when I take a look at Kansas State's schedule compared to Alabama's schedule, I don't think it's close. Alabama had the tougher schedule. Let me ask you a question. Does anybody actually think if TCU played Alabama's schedule, they go undefeated, they go into Neyland Stadium and beat Tennessee with a Heisman contending quarterback? I don't think so. I'm not even sold on the fact that if TCU played LSU tomorrow, they'd beat LSU. So when it comes to the harder schedule, I think that nod, it's got to go to Alabama. You also got to take this into consideration. Alabama, they don't have a great win. Their best win is against Texas, and I got to emphasize that. Because nobody in their right mind is ever going to give you credit and respect for a great loss. That's not even a thing. Nobody's going to point to Alabama losing to Tennessee and LSU on the road and go, hey, that's a great, valuable loss. You see what I'm saying? We're just not going to do that. Or at least I'm not going to do that. So with all of that being said, to answer the question, did the College Football Playoff Committee make a huge mistake by putting TCU in? Here's my answer. And I'm going to let you know right now, this is going to rub some people the wrong way, but I don't care. My answer to that question is no, the College Football Playoff Committee got it right. They didn't make a mistake, and let me explain why. Once again, would Alabama play Georgia better? Would they have gave him a better ball game? Yes, everyone knows that. But, and this is the biggest but out of them all, we can't reward Alabama every year just because we think they have all the talent and they probably would give Georgia a better game, or they probably would play Michigan or Ohio State better. Because if we just went off of that knowledge, and I really want you to pay attention and hear me out, why would we even play the regular season games? You see what I'm saying? They got to count for something. These losses Alabama had this year, it's got to go against them. Trust me, nobody wanted Alabama to make the playoff more than me, but that is the cold, hard truth. The committee didn't make a mistake. Alabama didn't deserve to be in. And I don't know if some of y'all are having recency bias because Alabama did look really good against Auburn and K-State. But before those games, Alabama almost even lost to Ole Miss. This is the same Alabama team that barely beat Texas A&M. Texas A&M didn't even make it to a bowl game. I'd be having a completely different conversation with you if Alabama in those 10 games outside those 2 losses would have dominated their competition, but that did not happen. This Alabama team throughout the year was embarrassing, and I mean that. This Alabama team was not like some of the Alabama teams we've seen in recent years. And by the way, let me remind you, although, yeah, the storyline's going to be TCU, they sucked, and don't get me wrong, they did suck in the game. I think they were shell-shocked, and they were just happy to be there. But also, we got to give credit to Georgia because they didn't just do that to TCU this year. They did that to Oregon. And what did everybody say? Oh, Oregon, they're overrated. Not really. Oregon still had a pretty good year. This Georgia team was just really, really, really good, and it was a combination of they was ready for the game and TCU was not. It's not the committee's fault that TCU laid a flat-out egg on national TV. That's my take on it. We can't just reward these teams because we think they're the best. At some point, you got to take into consideration, do they even deserve to be in the playoff? I know it's going to be heated and controversial in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts down below, but roll with it.